Okay, the last class we studied about we studied about there are various cost factors involved in designing process. So we discussed about recurring production cost, non-recurring cost, Can I see my PPT? Hello?
Oh, sir. Okay.
Okay. Okay, we discussed about various cost factors involved, and we discussed about the 4 types of cost. So in the next, we are going to study about tolerance design. So what is basically tolerance design? So tolerance design is nothing but it refers to the selection of specification for individual components using formal optimization. So it is the selection of specification for individual components using formal optimization. So various instruments and tools or equipments or products, etc., are given defined tolerances such as some specifications given by a company or an enterprise or a association or a various industries. So it is given there is a given sample or a given specification, and we are designing each of the design for that particular function in the various tolerances that are given for each and every products. So tolerances are given for each every products so as to meet up the expectation of that particular product for final assembly of the product. Okay, so we will be one of the things is the dimensioning of each of the products. So we are dimensioning a product is so as it can fit into another product once we are assembling. So it has to fit. It must not be loosely packed or it must not be tightly packed. For according to the purpose, it has to be fit properly. And for that, we are designing a product with appropriate dimensions. So these dimensions are used for assembling the product. So one of the example is that of a shaft mounted into a holding point. So we are designing this shaft in a shaft that can be rigid or a shaft that can rotate inside a point. For rotating purpose, we are providing significant fit so as not to be so much tight, but it must be loosely packed so as the shaft can rotate. While as in the case of a non-movable or unmovable shaft, the shaft is a rigid shaft is provided and it is fixed at a point without any movement, and for that purpose we are providing it as a tight fit. Okay, so such are the tolerance designs that are involved inside a designing process. So it can be also used in the case of a so it's a resistance of a specific resistor in a circuit board. So that is also another example. So various resistors are used across a circuit board for various purposes, and such resistors or the company has specified you have to use this kilo ohm resistor or a 1 kilo ohm resistor or a 5 kilo ohm resistor for the specific board. So we have to set such standards, and according to that standards we are designing the product. So that is the example under tolerance design. Next is an important topic, that is the product life cycle. So what is known as product life cycle? So it is basically known as the stages through which individual products develop over time, and it is known as product life cycle. It is the stages through which individual products develop over time. So we have various cycles in a product life cycle, and for a product to be formed, we had many designing categories. So we had studied about all the designing stages or the developmental stages, but now we are going to study about the product life cycle. So how a product is manufactured, and from the moment of manufacture to its decline period. That is what we are going to study. So it is basically divided into 4 stages: introduction stage, growth stage, maturity stage, and then finally comes the decline stage. So we will look each of the stages in detail. So if we are drawing a graph for product life cycle, it will be looking like this. So when we are plotting it against sales versus time, sales in the y-axis and time in the x-axis, we will see a sufficient growth like this. So if we are introducing a product, initially the sales will be low. Then when coming from the growth period onwards, it will gradually increase, and in maturity phase it has been the sales will be at the topmost position. You can see this is the topmost position it can attain. Once it goes below the topmost position, then that period is known as decline. So you can see it decline. So these are the phases of a product life cycle, and we will be discussing this in detail. And once this question is asked in the examination itself, so if it is asked, you have to draw this graph, and then you have to mention each of the stages, and you have to write specific examples and explanations also. So what is an introduction stage? An introduction stage is the product that is introducing into the market. First you are introducing the product into the market. So when the product is introduced, sales will be low until customer becomes aware of the product and its benefits. So that is the reason for the graph to show this sort of manner. So in an introduction stage, the people or the only specific consumers is aware of the specific product, and it is not used by various people around the world. So for customers, this product is a new thing. So when a new product is introduced in a market, people tend to avoid it or buy old products itself because of their reliability. So few customers will be only aware of the product and its benefits, and hence the sales of the sales during the introduction stage will be much less. Okay, then some firms may announce the product before it is introduced, but such announcements also alert competitors and remove the element of surprise. So what it mentions is that, so some firms may announce the product in terms of advertisement or a small sneak peek, and they will be providing models, etc., without showing the original product. But the problem is that so when there is an element of surprise or with the gimmick of an advertisement, people tend to buy the product. But when competitors, such as a competitor firm, if there is a firm that is competing with the current firm, they also manage to make the same product, and then they reduce the element of or remove the element of surprise. Okay, So the product will be then used by the competitors and released by the competitors, and this will also result in the low sales period during introduction stage. So a common example is one of the product that has been used from before and is currently in the decline stage. So that is why I have shown the picture. It's an ambassador car. So first, when it was released, it was during the introduction stage, people were not much aware, but it was becoming aware. So few people have bought these cars. Okay, so this is during the introduction stage. So when we will discuss each of the stage, you will see how it is done, how each stages the car has developed. So in introduction stage, the sales are very low, but we are using advertising cost. So we have to give advertisement so as the customers will be aware of the product that is being released and its benefits. So we have to provide an advertising field. So the advertising cost will be typically high during this stage in order to increase customer awareness of the product. So that is one of the reasons why the sales is also low there. So we are spending most of the cost here for advertising. Then during this stage, the firm is likely to incur additional cost associated with the initial distribution. So we are supplying the product to the market, and then some additional cost associated with the initial distribution is also done. So when there is a small demand, we will not get the desired profit during this stage. So during induction stage, the capital that is invested for the product is completely being utilized for this advertising and additional cost that is incurred during the initial distribution phase. Then during the introduction stage, the primary goal is to establish a market and build primary demand for the product class. So the primary goal is always to establish a market and build primary demand. In introduction stage, we are doing advertising, and the purpose of advertising is so that the customers are aware of the product, and it has to be established in a market for sufficient demand. So much demand must be coming for this said product, so people will buy it and use it frequently, and then where the company can incur much of the profits that are obtained during this stage. Next comes the growth stage. So during this stage, the products that survive the earlier stage tend to spend longest in this phase. So various products are produced across the world, and during introduction stage, these are all tried out, and people or customers try these products, and once they deem them reliable, they continue to use it. And when one customer or one consumer sees another customer using the product, he is tended to buy the said product, and then sufficiently people buy the products, and then the sales starts to grow during this stage. So that is why it is known as growth stage. So you can see the sales graph here. So you can see there is a significant increase when compared with introduction stage. There is a significant increase during the growth stage. So the basic sales increase or the basic profit that is incurred during the growth stage is very high than compared to maturity. You can see there is a small increase here, but there is a big or a steep increase at the growth stage. So most of the sales or the profit that is incurred in a company is during the product's growth stage. Okay, that is when the product is being used by many people and still being suggested to each and every consumer across the world. So that is how the growth stage is. The growth stage of a product life cycle takes place. and some products will not come into this stage. So they will be lapsed in from introduction stage itself. So some people may not adjust, or they will decline the said project and product, and it will be out of the market and it will not survive. So those products that survived only spend the longest in this phase. So they then continue to give the company the said profits. Okay. Sales increase as more customers become aware of the product and its benefits, and additional market segments are targeted. So customers become aware of the product, and then due to that, more sales occur, and the uh, profit incurred will be greater during growth stage. Okay, this is another example. During the growth stage, people tend to buy this car, and it was widely available in India itself. Okay, that is a growth stage. Then once the product has been proven a success and the customer begin asking for it, sales will increase further as more retailers become interested in carrying it. So initially there will be a market or two for distributing the product. So if you take a car itself, initially one showroom will be present, and when more customers are present, multiple showrooms will be built across each cities and all. So it will be easily available, accessible, and the product will be sold at that price itself. So many sales, the company will get so many sales, and the sales will increase, and that will increase the profit earned by the company. And when the competitors enter the market, often during the later part of the growth stage, there may be price competition and also increase the promotional cost in order to convince consumers. So the problem is that once a product is introduced and has reached the growth stage, numerous other products relating to that product or with the same product itself branded with another company will be released, and this competitions also lead to so you can see there is not it is a gradual rise but not a significant rise. It's a gradual rise. It is not going like this, but it is going like this. So that is because competitors are present in this stage, which who can release a related product or the product itself under a different gimmick or a different aesthetic aspect. According to that, the growth stage, during the growth stage, the sales differs, and the sales will never go down, but the sales will only increase gradually rather than steeply. Okay. So that is because of the competitors that are present inside the market during the later part of the growth stage. It is at the end of the growth stage. Next comes the maturity stage, and during maturity stage, the sales reach a point where it will not grow again. So it will reach a point. So you can see here. So it gradually rises when it reaches a point where it cannot go any further. So it is matured enough. People have been using it for a set period, and then new technologies arise replacing the product, and so that there is a decline phase of the product in the next cycle. So during maturity state, people use the vehicle, but it is like in the case of a museum. So ambassador cars are nowadays used in the maturity stage, and it is well beyond the maturity stage. It is gradually declining. So people used it before, and these were using conventional systems, and few of the technologies were incorporated into the vehicle, but still it has become obsolete, and so people have preferred various other or newer models of cars that are present across India. Okay, And why does the sales does not go above anymore? This is due to the market share taken by the competitors' products. So competitors have already released various cars or various products, and people tend to buy those products. Or competitors will release another product with more technologies or incorporating more technologies. So one of the examples is that old cars and all, they used players, right? MP3 players and all, and they had a USB point, they had a CD point, they had a radio and all. But nowadays we are seeing more touch screen, Bluetooth connected MP3 players, and the CDs have been become obsolete, and that is also one of the gimmicks. And due to that gimmick, vehicles with said features are preferred than that with CD players and etc. So that is how. So once the people know about that, then that will become common, and the other gradually declines. And that is how each and every gimmick is provided in a car so as to provide the car or promote the car for the customer to buy it again and again. Okay, so this all occurs during the maturity stage. So the product's sales does not goes any higher. So the most profitable cost that is occurring is under maturity stage. So we are getting the most profit out of the product at the maturity stage, because the cost that is incurred or the cost of profit that we are incurring during the maturity stage will be greater than the other stages. Hence, the profit that we are getting will be greater. Okay, but the period during which the profit incurred is long is during growth stage rather than maturity stage. So there is various phases, and the sales are rising steeply, and the margin of profit is greater in growth stage, while most number of profit or the most cash you can get during maturity stage only, because the product's price does not go any higher, and the profit incurred also will not go any more higher. Okay, that is a stage during maturity stage. Then comes the decline stage. So in decline stage, the more innovative products are introduced, or the consumer tastes has changed. So that is what I have told you before about the gimmick. So at the decline stage, eventually sales begins to decline as the market becomes saturated, the product becomes technologically obsolete, or the customer tastes change. So in three ways, so the market becomes saturated. It becomes saturated with all the said product itself. So if it's an ambassador car, people fully completely buy ambassador car, and people needs varieties. So many varieties. People tend to go after varieties of the car models, and in an ambassador car, variety includes in paint jobs and all, but still people wanted new design and new features, and for that purpose the product becomes saturated in the the product becomes technologically obsolete, or customer tastes change. So their taste change as in the means of new technologies and new attractions of different new cars that are being produced. So unit cost may increase with the declining production volumes, and eventually no more profits can be made. So unit cost is nothing but the cost incurred while producing and the number of products that are kept inside inventory. That is unit cost, and it may increase due to the declining production volumes. So the production volumes is declining, and only the unit cost is increasing. So that is the decline stage of the product life. So these are the four product life cycles. Next, we are going to look upon three types of designs considerations. So one is standardization, next is simplification, next is diversification. So what are these? So we are going to look at that in detail. So, standardization. It is the activity of establishing, with regard to actual or potential problems, provisions for common and repeated use aimed at the achievement of optimum degree of order in a given context. So, what does it mean? So, standardization is nothing but we are given various specifications or various standards for each design of a product. So, one of the standardization I have told you earlier for quality checking is ISO mark or ISO signature given. So, in the same way, a standardization is given. Maybe the dimension of the product, or the weight of the product, or the material to be used for the product. These are all standardized. So, you have used scales, right? And scales are mentioned in inches and centimeters. And sometimes for the values in between 0 and 1, graduations of millimeters are also provided, but not completely. So it is fixed. There's a 15 centimeter scale or a 30 centimeter ruler. These are all fixed with graduations of centimeters and inch. So it is specified earlier or standardized earlier that scales have to be made with such a measurement and with the material and divisions. So that is already fixed and it cannot be changed. So such standards are present across maybe designed by a institution or designed by a industry or designed by a group of a society of people or engineers, etc. So these are all standards mentioned somewhere, and these are utilized in the product so as to reduce various designs or any mistakes in said reading. So if you had a if the scales are made with any other graduations and all, there will be no standardization. So when one people go to buy this said product, it must be there for that function, and hence the standardization is given. And it can be also said as a document established by consensus. Consensus is nothing but a group of people or a group of body approves or sets up of some standards and is approved by a recognized body that provides for common and repeated use, rules and guidelines for activities or their results. So there will be activities done, even for procedures done during the design of the products or the results, the final product that has to be obtained. For these all purposes, standardization is achieved. Maybe for the equipment to be used or the process to be involved for the production of the product. For all these purposes, standardization is provided. And what is the need for standardization? So basic need is interchangeability. So we don't want many types of the products, but the products similarly with maybe some of the aesthetic aspects only, but do not it will not change uh, any its on products or its on specific products components used inside the product. So one of the example is the so you have used bath soaps and all, right? So there are many shapes, many fragrance, many colors, etc. But uh, the components or the products used to make said product is always same, no matter which company or which industry produces them. So these all the basic components present inside a soap will be similar. So that is what is meant as interchangeability. Next is product quality standards. So basic quality standards are mentioned by the group of society or the group of a body and by an industry and all, and such qualities must be maintained. Then reduces manufacturing cost. So various processes may involve in producing the products, and one standardized process is always mentioned for producing the product. And if you are this standardized process is done so as to it is done by various industries and tested and they have found out that it must be the most lowest or lowest cost incurred, or the manufacturing cost must be less for that process. So using a standardized method reduces manufacturing cost. Then health, for the health and safety of consumers. So I have told you already about it condition about the soap. So the basic components used inside a soap is similar. So this is because so there may be various ways to form the soap, that is called an ester, and to form that film, or to form that particular product, there may be various products, various components that can be used, but we are producing only same components are used. This is because for health and safety of the consumer. So if you are using any other methods, maybe it will affect the skin of the consumer, or it may cause various diseases and all. And for that purposes, a standardized procedure or a standardized particular component should be used for producing the product. Then comes improved utilization of resources. So we are using raw materials and we are refining it, and then we are producing the products. And while using each and every steps, there may wastage of, or waste occurs inside the manufacturing process. So if you are refining the raw materials, the various impurities are released from the um, refining of the ores, and we are getting the significant product. So if we are taking in the case of producing of a pipe, or we are using in a milling operation or a cutting operation, some parts or etc. we are cutting off. So if you are using a product, or if you are using a raw material, if you can use it completely, then we are getting much more. We are paying for using the raw material, or we are paying for obtaining the raw material, and we have to incur complete profit from using that product. So if there is any wastage, we are losing said amount of product, and that will incur in the availability, that will lessen the availability of the product that is used, and this is undesirable. And we are setting certain standardized procedures so as to reduce the wastage of the materials used, and that is one of the needs for standardization. Then enhanced communication and understanding. So it comes under each and every department is present inside a industry. So each department designs deals with various fields of the product development, and each of the fields has to work in a significant manner so as to produce the product at a certain time, or produce it at a certain quality. And for that purposes, a standardized procedures are mentioned, and these procedures will help for the sufficient activities. Okay, so that is the needs for standardization. Next is simplification. So basic notion of simplification is the reduction of complexity. So there will be a complex design, or a complex procedure, etc. So we had to simplify it. Why do you have to simplify it? So if you are using a complex system, it may be more costly, or it may lead to more defects, or there is a possibility of overworking of the, or the production time can increase. This will incur huge losses, and for that purposes and all, we have to simplify the manufacturing process, or the production cycle, or even the components used inside a product. So we have to attain the certain function, maybe sufficient strength and all, and it must be having a simplified design. So one of the example I have shown here is a drawing itself. So we can draw an apple in a very simple way as shown here, or a complex way as shown here. So this is the basic concept of simplification. So we are simplifying an object, or a production cycle, or a product life cycle, in a simple manner. So simplifying it can reduce its complexity and increases the profit that we can earn. So we view complexity as a way of characterizing designs from a given point of view expressed as a context, aspect, and measure. It can be discovered by, so if you want to simplify something, we have to discover by measuring and then comparing the complexity of two given designs. So if there is a design for a product at two different departments, or if we are creating two designs, or if we are producing a product and another product has been released by our competitor. So we are looking at the methods used by our competitor for producing the product, and when we are comparing, if we are finding out that the our procedure is more complex than the one used by the competitor, then that means we can learn from that how to reduce or how to reduce the complexity occurring. This will increase the profit, and this is one of the method for simplifying the work. And so we are basically doing is that we are measuring and then comparing the complexity of the two given designs. So we are comparing and we are finding out what is wrong or what is the additional processes that we are using for the production process. And then we are solving a design simplification problem. So we are analyzing and obtaining the problem, or discovering the problem, and then we are finding various solutions to achieve reduction in reduction in the production cycle. Okay, so I will wind up today's session. Next, I'll take the attendance. Akash K,
Sir, sir,
Akhil M,
Present, sir.
Amit K,
Present, sir.
Anirudh Suresh, Anirudh Suresh, absent. Karthik,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Aladin,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Shazad,
Present, sir.
Mubtasim,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Asaf, Mohammad Asaf, absent. Mohammad Fardeen,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Fateh,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Samar,
Present, sir.
Mohammad Sian,
Present, sir.
Nisha K,
Present, sir.
Nived Kumar,
Sir.
Pratyush Premarajan, Pratyush Premarajan, absent. Rahul Rajiv,
Present, sir.
Sarun Rajiv,
Present, sir.
Saurag R,
Present, sir.
Saurav Srijit,
Present, sir.
Srirag Vijayan,
Present, sir.
Vishnu AP,
present, sir.
Vishnu N,
Present, sir.
Adarsh Manohar.
Muhammad Asaf present.
Okay, okay.
The ranger last. Muhammad Asaf presenting.
Okay, okay. Okay, then thank you.
Good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, sir.
Oh.
Good afternoon, sir.